No doubt, Porsche is a great and iconic car manufacturer, so you begin to wonder why they have never participated in Formula One racing over the years. The last time we heard about Porsche in the same breath as F1 racing was as far back as 1991, and even then, they were a minor player and the Porsche name was not even branded on the F1 race car in question. To be fair to Porsche, they are heavily involved in other motorsports races like the Le Mans 24-Hour Challenge and the newly constituted Formula E racing calendar. Porsche has, in fact, tried to get into the Formula One business as recently as 2021. Since then, it has been about the back and forth amid the rumors and speculations. No doubt fans of both Porsche and F1 have followed the unfolding developments religiously. But more recently, it has come to light that the Porsche F1 bid has fallen through. And it would take yet another decade before Porsche can revive their hopes of entering F1 with a new bid. Typically, any chance to get a piece of the Formula One pie is dependent on a major rule change by the FIA. In this case, the FIA has ruled that cars must shift to a more eco-friendly engine by 2026. This rule is supposed to level the playing field, especially for smaller racing teams. It's major rule changes such as this that allow for new entrants into the field. Otherwise, the more established teams will always dominate. So Porsche and some other investors like Ford and Audi saw the opportunity to enter now or forever hold their peace. In reality, Ford was a competitor to Porsche because they were both gunning for the same deal with Red Bull. Audi, on the other hand, is a subsidiary of the Volkswagen conglomerate which also owns Porsche. Audi was aiming for a deal with a smaller team named Sauber Racing. The Audi-Sauber deal was successfully signed off because Audi offered a lot more in terms of money and concession agreements. Let's not forget that Sauber are a lesser-known racing team, so the deal with Audi was good enough at whatever price. On their part, Porsche was in talks with the Williams racing team and McLaren. However, those talks were unfruitful, so Porsche turned to Red Bull. In any case, what Porsche was offering was financial backing and the Porsche brand in exchange for a controlling stake in the team. For the Williams racing team and McLaren, that would have ultimately meant substituting the team name for the Porsche brand. Sadly, those talks fell through somehow because Porsche felt they deserved to shake hands with a bigger racing team. As such, they approached Red Bull, and theoretically, they were a match made in heaven. It turned out whatever agreement they might have reached would have been lopsided in favor of Porsche. Porsche wasn't really bringing enough to the table, and a deal would have meant that the Red Bull team would lose considerable influence in decision-making. So they more or less said, no thanks. Executives on both sides have since come out to say it was a no-deal situation, and that this decision was mutual. Nonetheless, since then, Ford has stepped in with a better deal for the guys at Red Bull that has them retaining the majority stake in the brand name. Ford will only be providing some technical support aside from a monetary obligation. In short, they have agreed to be second-tier partners, which is what the Red Bull team wanted all along. The implications of this news is Porsche will not be entering the 2026 racing season either as a partner or a full-fledged team. The latter option was always available, and the FIA opened up 2 new team slots in the 2025 racing season onwards. But starting a new racing team from scratch involves a lot of financial investment, even more so than partnering with an already established team, however minor or major they may be. So Porsche steered clear of the idea and instead dared to become a major partner to the Red Bull team. Suffice it to say, a partnership can mean anything from providing the default team engine to bankrolling the team operations to everything in between. But Porsche overestimated their value and sort of downgraded what they had to offer. In hindsight, they were offering a brand sponsorship, financial support, and very little technical input in exchange for a controlling stake in the Red Bull setup. Red Bull would have to continue running things themselves like they did in the past. So nothing changed really, and Porsche wasn't offering anything new except to take over the control of Red Bull's operations. Ford, on the other hand, was more flexible and so won the partnership bid. Aside from Porsche, a few other well-known car manufacturers saw their opportunity to enter the Formula One setup with the recent rule change. The nature of the rule change revolved around the ban on the use of MGU-H engine power units. The rules also include the strict use of synthetic fuels only, amongst some other new engine stipulations. These new rules invariably meant a reboot for the F1 franchise, allowing new teams or partners to register their interest. It also lined all the teams along the same takeoff mark in a manner of speaking. From the time the new engine rules would become effective, all teams would have an equal chance at mounting the podium. so companies like Honda, Renault, and Audi hope to enter in one capacity or another. Whether it was a financial sponsorship, or a technical partnership for producing racing engines, or building race car chassis, the goal was to become affiliated with any F1 team, and so share in the glory of competing and perhaps winning. Porsche have essentially lost a golden opportunity to enter the F1 for a second time, with the first being the disastrous 1991 footwork partnership. This doesn't necessarily mean that beyond 2026, Porsche won't find a willing partner if they so desire. In truth, the cycle usually takes a decade to come around. Rule changes, like the one being proposed by the FIA from 2026 onwards, are just as rare. So when we say it will take that long for Porsche to get back in the game, we are only being realistic. You would not be wrong if you thought Porsche executives blew it with this one. We followed the negotiations with a keen sense of approval. At last, everyone's favorite car brand was making a berth in Formula One, and they were going to achieve it with Red Bull, the leading team on the circuit. The dream would manifest as Porsche ultimately dusting the competition. To many Porsche enthusiasts who happen to be F1 fans also, a deal between those two was overdue. So when the news broke that the deal was a no deal, it bummed us all. Maybe it would work in another 10 years. But the truth is, Porsche may have missed the opportunity of a generation, or lifetime, even to register its name in Formula One. And as sad as it is to hear, Porsche will probably never rebound from this. They say Porsche has always had a slacker attitude towards F1, whereas its sister company under the Volkswagen umbrella, Audi, has been able to secure their own F1 deal. As such, Audi are the part new owners of the Sauber team with a 25% stake that could go up to 75%. Until recently, Sauber ran on an Alfa Romeo engine that will continue to power the race car until 2025 when the deal expires. So Audi were willing to babysit their deal until then. While Porsche was simply offering cash for control, Audi opted for a more hands-on approach so both sides of the negotiating table could equally win. But we're not surprised at Porsche, which has always treated F1 lightly and never given it top priority. Historically, any time they ventured into the race, it was always for the sake of it, and not because they were serious competitors. In the 1960s, they entered for 2 consecutive calendar years before calling their participation off. It would take another 3 decades or so before Porsche was associated with Formula One again, and that timeout was a disaster. As for the 2026 racing year, Porsche were offered the opportunity on a golden platter, but they tossed it back in the face of the FIA. Other teams have since taken advantage of the opening. Ford and Audi are good examples, while Honda has left its options open. There is also rumor of an entirely new team resulting from an Andretti and Cadillac collaboration. If you didn't know already, that's General Motors partnering with the Andretti Motorsport team. It's yet another match made in heaven, or at least enough of it to console us.